In the Gospels, Jesus asks his disciples an important question. Who do you say I am? Over 2,000 years later, this question continues to reverberate in the human heart. Some have only given this question a cursory thought. Others have spent years pondering the answer, searching the scriptures, and looking for evidence. This spring, Fiat Ministry Network and Patchwork Heart Ministry team with researchers and experts who have studied the Shroud of Turin to once again pose Christ's question to you. Who do you say I am?
Today, many students go to college with numerous questions about their faith, yearning to know if the seed planted in them as a child is both true and practical. Using the miracle on the road to Emmaus as a model, young adult ministers conversed weekly for 3 months with college students about the most pressing questions they had about the Catholic faith. As they journeyed together virtually, something amazing happened. Doubts disappeared, fears faded, and Jesus revealed that he is still alive. Hearts Burning Within Us, the latest book from Patchwork Heart Ministry, is a result of that grace-infused conversation. It is the perfect back-to-school gift for recent high school graduates and current college students. Get your copy for them today at patchworkheart.org or by calling 424-704-3278. That's 424-704-3278.
Welcome to the Sowing Hope podcast. This is a show all about implanting hope in our hearts. I'm Bill Snyder, joined by my friend Ann DeSantis. We're glad you're here for our uplifting conversation about faith and how it sustains our hearts through all the seasons of life. Thanks for walking with us.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Sowing Hope. I am Bill Snyder. It's great to be with you. As always, I am joined by my good friend and co-host, Ann DeSantis. We are starting on a 10-episode journey on parenting, which I'm super excited about. And I want to remind you that, as always, for the full series and for all of our podcasts and everything that we do, you can go over to patchworkheartradio.org and find us. So we're looking forward to this series, and I know I am, and excited to be here tonight with you.
Yeah, it's really exciting. I love the idea that we're doing this parenting series. It's really a Catholic parenting series because we're really integrating faith, but it's appropriate for anybody. And so anyone, any person of faith wants to listen to this podcast. And Bill, I believe what we're going to do, what we discussed was each week for these 10 weeks is that we're going to focus on a different aspect of parenting. So on this one, we're going to talk about pregnancy, preparing for your child, your first child, or whatever number child that is, and also when they're babies, and how we can actually start to integrate faith into being that parent to a baby. And I know, Bill, you know a lot about that.
Well, I don't know if I know a lot about it, but I'm experiencing it now. That's what I would say is that, I'm experiencing this right now, in my journey, in my walk with life, because I have a 9-month-old baby. As many of you listening to this podcast have known, Ann and I share different parts of our lives. So if you've been a regular listener, you know that. If you're a first time listener, you're just tuning in for this series. I have a 9-month-old son. His name is Elvin Francisco, and I have a amazing wife, Agnes. So we're super excited about his arrival. But yeah, there's a lot to unpack for certain, and plenty of sleepless nights to revisit.
That's right. And it's been an amazing journey even for me too with you having Elvin, because we began the Sowing Hope podcast in March of 2020. So it was like in the heart of the beginning of the pandemic.
Right.
And so, of course, Elvin was born in May of 2021. So during that time of us, recording all of those podcasts, I got to talk to Bill and see the progression along the pregnancy. And then, of course, when Elvin was born on May 5th, his birthday's coming up.
Yeah,
His
Cinco de
first
Mayo.
birthday. Cinco de Mayo. So, yeah, it was really an exciting thing. But the one thing I thought we could talk about on this podcast is, Bill, I know that you did, even from the very beginning, is you started to pray for him when he was still in utero. And maybe you could talk about that.
Oh yeah. I think one of the biggest things you can do is pray. And none of this was like earth-shattering prayer. Like I wasn't, praying rosary after rosary after rosary, but I would, while Agnes was pregnant, I would, touch her belly and say some prayers for him and over him, and ask God to protect him and keep him well through his development in utero, which God did. There were a few challenges in there, but God did an amazing job knitting him together, and he is a beautiful young man. But yeah, I mean, I think prayer is such an important thing. I think just intentionally praying for the pregnancy. I know, Anne, you have gave me some wonderful resources through the St. Raymond Nonatus Foundation. And I actually brought that entire package to the hospital with me when Agnes delivered. And believe it or not, Agnes had a very long labor with Elvin. It was 31 hours. And so everybody's texting me going, is a baby here yet? And I'm like, no, just leave it at that. But basically, we had a lot of time to, sit there, reflect, on a lot of different things, and really care for my wife, of course, going through such a long labor. But using the chaplet, I remember going to bed the very first night, we got there at 10 o'clock in the morning to be induced, and then, or 8 o'clock in the morning to be induced. And then, he wasn't born until 5 p.m. the next day. And so there we are, the next day or that evening. And I'm sitting there going, oh man, I better, just entrust all to keep entrusting all this to God. I used the chaplet of St. Raymond Nonatus in the hospital, continued to pray with my wife. I anointed her with blessed her with some holy water right before she gave birth, and began the actual pushing and all of that. So yeah, I mean, again, nothing, but it all was natural. Like I wasn't like going to have some big prayer service in the middle of the hospital. Like I wasn't going for that. I was just doing it at natural times and breaks. Like, okay, I'm gonna lay down for here, she's asleep, let me say this, let me pray this, let me just right before she gives birth, put a little bit of the holy water on her, but like, and of course on the belly, but like it was natural. Like it wasn't like, oh my gosh, I've got to like go and have this big prayer service and get everybody together and say a rosary or something. Like it wasn't like that. at any point. It was just this intentional um, mindfulness that God was present and doing something amazing. I once heard somebody say, anytime that you are going to the hospital and you are leaving with one more or leaving with one less, it is a life event. It is a life event. So
Yes.
when you're going with birth and death, right? When you're going there to welcome a baby, it's a big event, and God should be involved in it. So I hope that paints a little bit of a picture for you.
Oh, that was beautiful. I mean, you brought me down memory lane a little bit too with the time that you said that I had given you the kit. It's a special kit for the St. Raymond Nonnatus uh, Foundation. Actually, it's more through the order, the religious order that I represent, which is the Mercedarian religious order. I want to give that information to our audience too. If you know someone, or it's you yourself, that maybe your wife or yourself, or you're pregnant and you want to get those extra prayers, that Saint Raymond Nonnatus is the patron saint of expectant mothers. And so when you get the kit, it's a special kit that has the holy water, the rosary, the prayers. Just reach out to me, if you would, at nonatus.org on our contact form. I'll just give you my email address too, because I can connect you to get that for someone, for
Yeah.
you or someone you know. My email address is director.srnf@gmail.com, and that stands for the St. Raymond Nonnatus Foundation. But Bill, you're right. I mean, you made a good point that it's not like you have to have a big prayer meeting for any type of prayer that you're doing for your child, whether it's during childbirth or any other issue. Just offering that prayer yourself or with your loved one, your spouse, your family, is a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing. It doesn't have to be very formal, does it?
No.
Uh, and I thought, Bill, maybe you could share with us. I mean, Elvin was born. You prayed for him throughout the pregnancy. I know you even told me that sometimes you would say those prayers even to uh, your wife's belly. Sometimes you would
Oh yeah.
say, talk to, right? Say a prayer. And then now I think you told me that you do pray with him, even when you're holding him or when he's resting off to sleep. You say prayers. Talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's really simple. I think I remember my bedtime prayers as a kid. My mom and dad would always come into our room and at night, when we were 3, 4, 5, 6, it's kind of those early formation years. You kind of remember that, um, and and even still, I mean, you know, they would go and say our prayers with us, the Hail Mary, the Our Father, now I lay me down to sleep or whatever, before bed. And, that always laid a really good foundation. And we'd go and pray for all the different people in our family, right? My mom, my dad, my grandparents, my brothers, my sisters, just everybody that was in our family. We would just lift them up and say, God bless them. Right. So, it was not, pretty much nightly that would happen. And so I just, figured even the very first night I was in the hospital with Alvin, I just said, we're going to pray for everybody. We're just going to pray. And it was great. I was able to hold him in my hands. He was much smaller then. Now he's 9 months, wiggling out of my hands. But because he wants to go to some toy or go play in his crib or whatever. But, now it's a little more challenging. But when he was first born, yeah, I mean, it was amazing because, you'd just be able to sit there and make the sign of the cross on his forehead after he was baptized. I did not do that before he was baptized. I just let everybody know that, but then, after he's baptized, he being able to make the sign of the cross on his forehead and just be able to pray the sign of the, being able to pray the family prayers. But even before he was baptized, I would say the family prayers with him. And, we teach him, I mean, he's never too young. You're never too old to pray. There's never a bad time to pray. There's never a state of the soul you should not pray in. I mean, St. Catherine of Siena said that. It doesn't matter what state your soul is in, you should always be praying and always, lift up to God those prayers. And so I often look at him and go, man, you're perfect, right? Like, he was baptized. He has no personal sin on him right now. I mean, I'm sure that'll happen as he gets older, but he doesn't have any personal sin right now. So he's perfect. You can look at him and go, man, I get to say my prayers with this perfect little baby, and teach him how to pray and how to, just grow up in the faith. I think, it's those examples that you set And it's a good example for me too. Like, I mean, I get some prayer time too, because when I pray with him, because honestly, being a stay-at-home dad, I mean, even yesterday, and like, hey, when can we record this podcast, right? Well, like, man, actual parenting is standing in the way of doing a parenting podcast, because I got to wait for him to go down for a nap, and he's not sleeping at the right time. So, but no, it's all good.
Yeah, it's all good. It's all good. I was just recollecting in my head, in my mind, when my children were babies and I was preparing for pregnancy, and actually during the pregnancy too, is because I know this podcast is about faith and how do we exercise our faith to pray for our children, and how do we teach them about God, you know? And for myself, looking back, I mean, of course, when you have that first child, you just don't know what to anticipate. So the prayers are always just kind of, I remember for me, they were always just kind of, I hope everything's okay.
Yeah.
I hope my baby is healthy. I hope that the childbirth goes okay. I remember that when I delivered my first child, Elaine, someone, and I think it was my cousin's grandmother, like on the other side of the family, had given me a relic. And to be quite honest with you, it was almost 26 years ago. So of course I don't remember what the relic was, since it was quite a while back. But I do remember that was one thing that I did, and I think that's an important thing to ask other people to pray for you during that pregnancy, and accept those things like the relics, or we'd say this, the Saint Raymond Nonatus kit with the holy water and the different things that you can do to intercede, right, to saints, which is an important thing.
Yeah.
But getting into talking a little bit about babyhood for me, one of the things I remember that I did with both of the girls when they were babies, and we're going to say below the age of 2, we'll say infancy, right? Below the age of 2,
Yeah. Yeah.
was my way of teaching them about God and about Jesus and about the church. Was I used to use those little board books, the board books that are not the paper books, but they're solid like cardboard. They bought some Christian Catholic books just to read to them about prayers and different things.
Mhm.
But another thing that I did was when we would go outside and we would look up at the sky, and I would point up to the sky and I would say heaven or Jesus. And that was an initial way to teach them about something beyond earth, something beyond who we are here on earth, right, as people. And I remember that when they got to be 2 and 3 and 4, they would still associate those clouds, the sky, with heaven, with Jesus. It's a simple thing, but I really do think it carried over as a way to start to educate them. And then when they would start to go to mass with us, I would do the same thing with the tabernacle or the altar. That Jesus, that's where Jesus is.
Right.
And you start simple. And I used to babysit for my niece, my brother's daughter, who's now actually in college, in her first year of college. But she was with us for a few years, from the time of 6 months old up until over 3 years old. And I remember doing the same thing with her. I would point up to the sky, or whenever I would take her to church, if we did go to church for something, try to show her that too. So it was just a little gift to give to other family members too.
Yeah.
And just a little bit of advice. So I don't know, Bill, talk more also about, I know you read to Elvin.
Oh, yeah.
And you say those prayers with him too.
Oh, sure. The board books. In fact, yesterday I did the little book, Jesus Loves Me. Like, I mean, there's so many opportunities. And again, it doesn't have to be, I mean, you start, obviously when you're in parent mode and you're learning and you're growing and you're, on all these different websites trying to learn, you're like, oh, okay, unstructured playtime, unstructured this, that's the best way they learn. Okay, well, all right. Well, it doesn't have to be, like I'm going to sit you down at 10 o'clock every day and tell you about Jesus. Like, that's not, what I'm going to do. But it's these little moments, right, where you're able to say things like, hey, look up at the sky. That's a beautiful way in. Or, read you this book about Jesus or whatever. And it just begins to plant those little seeds, saying the Our Father as you're falling asleep, or doing some family prayers. Like, this is not, none of what we're talking about is like hard. You know what I mean? It is hard, if you're uncomfortable starting it, I'm comfortable doing it. But if you're uncomfortable doing it, like, okay, sitting there praying with your baby or your spouse or whatever, like it comes natural to me. But maybe there's some people out there that doesn't. So just step out of the water a little bit and just say the prayers out loud. Say them out loud so your baby can hear you, right? Actually, say the words, and learn about, who they are in Jesus, in Christ. And I think it almost goes without saying, but if you haven't had your child baptized, get them baptized. That is the best way you can give them an experience, because it is Christ's, initiation into that family. It's being a part of this family of God. And so if you haven't had your kid baptized, get them baptized. And any local Catholic church can help you out with that. But yeah, I think that's the biggest thing, is just, this unstructured, like, hey, there's the sky, there's this, there's that. Read a book that's faith-based. And there's so many great resources out there, right? And I mean, there's a bazillion of different resources out there for young, moms and dads. Perpetual Light Publishing has so much. Our good friend Jeannie Egolf has so many children's books for
That's
that are
right.
faith-based. And so go check them out, right? At Perpetual Light Publishing. Just Google that and you'll find amazing books. We've had a lot of authors on the show here before. So yeah, I mean, check that out.
Yeah, great advice, because there's so many wonderful Catholic authors and Christian authors that have written books to help your family grow in faith, especially when you do have a baby. And I think even if you simply just go to Amazon and you key in like Catholic books for babies or infants or toddlers, I mean, you're going to get things are going to pop up. But Jeannie Goff, like you said, Perpetual Light Publishing, that is a wonderful resource for all of you who are listening, not just for you, but for your friends. Maybe you have grandchildren. That would be a perfect gift too. I want to back up, Bill. You brought up something very important about the baptizing your baby. And, back in the day, years ago, people would baptize their babies almost like right after birth. I mean, it could be a month later or maybe at the most 2 months. But they didn't tend to wait. I think these days, sometimes people wait quite a while to baptize that baby. And a good point that you made, Bill, is get it done. I mean, looking back for me, now I baptized both of my daughters at the age of about 3 months old. Now, looking back, I probably should have done it a little sooner, I think. And giving you the reason, why did I wait? Why did I wait? And my reason for waiting back then, which now looking back, I don't know whether it was the perfect, reason to wait, but we were having a party. We were having a party with the family, and of course, for me, especially first time motherhood with a first child, it was just enough to get by that first month than to have to plan a 50-person, baptism party at a restaurant or something, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I did. I mean, I guess I waited until she was about 6 weeks old, and then I started to call around to restaurants and, find out where we could host this thing, because we came from pretty big families, and wanted everybody to be there. But I guess what I'm trying to communicate on this podcast is that looking back, maybe trying to step it up a little bit and doing it more like at 6 weeks or 2 months instead of waiting the 3 months, 4 months, 5 months. Just for the sake of, baptizing your child after birth and not waiting too long, right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
So, but it's difficult sometimes, I think, for people, because as a new mom, maybe you are a little tired and you don't want to have to plan this party if you do have more than 10 or 15 people. My husband happens to have a very big family, so it was a normal thing. Like a small baptism party could be 50, 60, even 100 people, and so it was just a lot to do. But looking back, I definitely probably would have stepped up when I decided to do that, to baptize.
Yeah. And I mean, like for me, I cannot relate at all because I had an emergency baptism in the hospital before my first open heart
That's
surgery at 3 weeks
right.
old. So they actually had a big party for me after I was all good, like a year or two, after my first surgeries went through. My parents had a certain, I had a big party with all my family and like a rededication, but they couldn't baptize me again because I had been baptized in the hospital. Um, but for Elvin, we got him baptized very early on, like 3 weeks old. I mean, as I said to my pastor, I said it's probably my gut reaction, just because that that's
Yeah.
me, that's my experience. But and also with family logistics too, and I think that's a big piece of it. And it's okay to coordinate that. Like, I mean, I have family here from Puerto Rico who lives in Puerto Rico, so um, they were here for the birth, staying here. We wanted to do it before they flew back home, because we didn't want them to miss it. And my family lives, in the States, so it's easier for them to travel. And we said, well, what if we do it at 3 weeks before my family flies back, so that we can, have everybody present for the baptism. And we didn't have a big thing because, of course, COVID was going on.
Yes.
And so we actually live streamed the baptism to to our family who wasn't able to be with us. But yeah, I mean, that's I think just some of the little ways that you can, make sure your family's present. Do it in a way that honors your family, honors your mom, honors your dad and their role. Godparents. Make sure you do it right, unless you have to have an emergency situation like myself, where that can happen. But most importantly, get your child baptized. And after that, remember that faith is a lifelong journey. And just because you've been baptized, uh, does not mean that things are not going to go wrong, right? In life, like I was baptized, had to have open heart surgery, had a stroke, had a whole bunch of other stuff go wrong in my life early on. But boy, am I glad that I had that baptism, because without it, I wouldn't be the person I am today. So get your children baptized and pray with them and follow up and continue to do, um, you know, live that life of faith. It's not hard, right? We just detailed a whole bunch of ways. It's not hard to do it.
Mm-mm. You did a good job, though, Bill. The way that you describe that is that you do need to, some people do just go through the motions of a baptism, or having their children go through the sacraments, the Holy Communion, confirmation, whatever, all the different sacraments. But then if they sort of drop off, that happens sometimes in our faith. I'm sure it doesn't just happen in the Catholic faith. It happens in other religions too, that people don't follow up. But you as a parent, right? Me as a parent, that's part of our responsibility, and the promises that we make when we say that we are going to teach our children. We're the first teachers of the faith, right? So I think that's an important thing. But just backtracking again, what you were saying about baptism, I just wanted to say that one thing that you could do is kind of what Bill said. Maybe it might be a lot for you to plan a party or something when your baby's only 2 months old, and to have 25 or 50 people over or something, or at a restaurant. But maybe if you baptize the baby first and then have the party, maybe if it's too much, looking back, that's probably what I should have done. Is probably just baptized a little earlier and then had the celebration maybe a month or two later or something. But that's an idea. It's just something to throw out there. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to follow the rules of what everybody else does, right? I mean, you can do things slightly differently. So I think this is going to be a great series, Bill. I'm
Yeah.
excited. And next time, what we'll talk about, we're going to just go through like all the stages, right? And so this time we did pregnancy and infancy. Next time, for the next one, we'll do like infancy through like toddlerhood. We'll start
Right.
talking about that and things you can do in the faith perspective to try to help your family grow. So, Bill, thank you so much.
Of course, yeah. No, this is always fun, and so thank you, and look forward to doing the rest of these, and growing up with Elvin too, because it's gonna help. It's gonna help me form my faith as I step into intentional parenthood. So it's definitely.
That's right. Right. Thank you again, Bill.
Of course. Well, folks, we thank you for tuning in and listening, and you can always reach out to us and find us on our email, sewinghope@patchworkheart.org, SEWING, hope@patchworkheart.org. patchworkheart.org. Reach out to us, say hello. We always like that. And you can also find us on patchworkheartradio.org. But until next time, from all of us here at Patchwork Heart Ministry and Fiat Ministry Network, may God bless you. Keep beating to your Catholic heart.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Sowing Hope on Patchwork Heart Radio. For more information about this podcast and our ministries, visit our websites, patchworkheart.org and andesantis.com. You can also follow and interact with us on Twitter at PWH Ministry or Andy Santis 2.
Today, many students go to college with numerous questions about their faith, yearning to know if the seed planted in them as a child is both true and practical. Using the miracle on the road to Emmaus as a model, young adult ministers conversed weekly for 3 months with college students about the most pressing questions they had about the Catholic faith. As they journeyed together virtually, something amazing happened. Doubts disappeared, fears faded, and Jesus revealed that He is still alive. Hearts Burning Within Us, the latest book from Patchwork Heart Ministry, is a result of that grace-infused conversation. It is the perfect back-to-school gift for recent high school graduates and current college students. Get your copy for them today at patchworkheart.org or by calling 424-704-3278. That's 424-704-3278.
In the Gospels, Jesus asks his disciples an important question. Who do you say I am? Over 2,000 years later, this question continues to reverberate in the human heart. Some have only given this question a cursory thought. Others have spent years pondering the answer, searching the scriptures, and looking for evidence. This spring, Fiat Ministry Network and Patchwork Heart Ministry team with researchers and experts who have studied the Shroud of Turin to once again pose Christ's question to you. Who do you say I am?